The Pacific sun beat down mercilessly on Henderson Field, turning the metal of our aircraft into baking ovens and the coral runway into a shimmering mirror of heat. It was August 1943, and I was First Lieutenant Michael Carson, a P-38 Lightning pilot with the 339th Fighter Squadron stationed on Guadalcanal. The war in the Pacific had become a brutal contest of attrition, each side bleeding resources and men in an endless struggle for control of these God-forsaken islands. I'd been flying combat missions for 8 months, accumulating a respectable 5 confirmed kills and a reputation as a solid, reliable pilot. Not an ace, not a hotshot, just someone who did his job and brought his plane home in one piece. That was enough for most guys, but it wasn't enough for me. The problem was range. Our P-38s were fantastic aircraft, fast, heavily armed, with twin engines that could bring you home even if one got shot up. But engaging enemy fighters meant getting close, often dangerously close, where their more maneuverable Zeros could turn the tables on you in seconds. I'd seen too many good pilots go down because they had to press an attack into the enemy's engagement envelope. I started thinking about long-range gunnery. The P-38's nose-mounted armament, one 20mm cannon and 4 50 caliber machine guns, was devastating at standard combat ranges of 200 to 300 yards. But what if we could engage effectively at much greater distances? 1,000 yards, maybe more. We could hit enemy aircraft before they even knew we were there, before they could maneuver, before the fight became a knife fight where luck mattered as much as skill. The idea consumed me. I spent every spare moment studying ballistics, trajectory calculations, lead angles at extended ranges. I filled notebooks with diagrams and equations, calculating bullet drop at various distances, factoring in air density at different altitudes, considering the relative velocities of target and shooter. The other pilots thought I was obsessed, and maybe they were right. But obsession sometimes produces results that casual effort never could. The engineering officer, Captain Tom Williams, thought I was crazy when I first approached him with my theories. "Carson, you want to do what?" He looked at me like I'd suggested flying to Tokyo and back on a single tank of gas. "Engage enemy fighters at 1,000 yards. That's beyond maximum effective range for the armament. The bullet drop alone would be..." "Calculable," I interrupted. "Predictable. If we know the ballistic characteristics of the ammunition, if we understand the trajectory at extended range, we can compensate, adjust our aim point to account for drop in lead. It's just math, sir. Math that nobody's ever successfully applied in air combat," Williams countered. "There's a reason we engage at close range, Lieutenant, because hitting a maneuvering target at distance is nearly impossible. Nearly impossible isn't the same as impossible." He studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious, sir. I want to develop a technique for long-range aerial gunnery. Test it, refine it, prove it works. If we can engage enemy aircraft at ranges where they can't effectively return fire, we change the entire dynamic of air combat." Williams was skeptical, but he was also a good officer who recognized initiative when he saw it. He authorized me to conduct test firing exercises during training flights, using towed targets and calculated aim points to develop the technique I envisioned. The other pilots thought I was wasting my time. "Long-range P-38 shell," they called it mockingly, making it sound like some kind of mythical ammunition that could reach impossibly far. Captain Jake Morrison, a skilled pilot with 8 confirmed kills, was particularly dismissive. "Carson's out there shooting at clouds again," he'd announce whenever I returned from a training flight. "Still trying to prove you can hit something you can barely see, Mike." "You'll see," I'd reply, keeping my voice level despite the frustration. "When this technique works, it'll change how we fight." "If it works," Morrison corrected with a grin. "Big if, buddy, real big if." Even my wingman, Second Lieutenant Danny Foster, had doubts. He'd fly with me during the test exercises, watching as I fired at towed targets from ranges that seemed absurd by conventional standards. Sometimes I'd miss by a mile, other times I'd get close. And occasionally, just occasionally, I'd connect, proving that hitting targets at extreme range was possible with the right calculations and technique. "I'll give you credit for persistence," Danny said after one particularly frustrating training session where I'd burned through hundreds of rounds with minimal hits. "But Mike, even when you do hit at that range, is it worth the ammunition expenditure? We're not exactly swimming in bullets out here. One hit at 1,000 yards is worth 10 misses at 200, I argued, because at 1,000 yards, the enemy can't shoot back effectively. We control the engagement entirely. The skepticism extended beyond just my squadron. During a briefing with Group Headquarters, I presented my findings to Colonel James Patterson, our group commander. He listened politely as I explained the mathematics, the ballistic curves, the potential tactical advantages of long-range engagement. "Lieutenant Carson," he said when I finished, "I appreciate innovative thinking, but what you're proposing goes against decades of aerial combat doctrine. Dogfighting requires getting close, using maneuverability and positioning to gain advantage. You're suggesting we abandon proven tactics for an unproven theory." "Not abandon, sir. Supplement. Use long-range engagement to gain initial advantage, then close if necessary for conventional combat. And if your initial shots miss, you've wasted ammunition and alerted the enemy to your presence. If my shots connect, sir, the enemy never gets a chance to react. That's worth the risk." Patterson remained unconvinced, but like Williams, he didn't forbid me from continuing my experiments. The military, for all its adherence to doctrine and procedure, still had room for mavericks who might stumble onto something valuable. I was given tacit permission to pursue my long-range gunnery project, though nobody expected much to come of it. The breakthrough came during a dawn training flight in late July. I'd been refining my technique for weeks, developing what I called the extended intercept method. It involved calculating the target's position not where it was, but where it would be by the time my rounds reached maximum range. I had to account for bullet drop, significant at 1,000 yards, as well as the target's speed, direction, and potential evasive maneuvers. The physics were complex, but not impossible. A 20mm round fired from my cannon would travel at roughly 2,800 feet per second initially, but would lose velocity due to air resistance. At 1,000 yards, 3,000 feet, the round would take approximately 1.5 seconds to reach the target, during which time it would drop significantly due to gravity. I had to aim high to compensate for that drop, sometimes aiming what felt like an entire aircraft length above my actual target. The towed target drogue was flying a standard pattern at 8,000 feet. I positioned my P-38 at 10,000 feet, approximately 1,200 yards behind and slightly above the target. Through my gun sight, I could barely make out the drogue, just a small shape against the ocean below. I calculated the lead, adjusted for drop by aiming well above the target, and fired a short burst from my 20mm cannon. The drogue disintegrated in a shower of fabric and metal. "Holy shit!" Danny's voice crackled over the radio. "Mike, you hit it. At that range, you actually hit it." I felt a surge of excitement that I forced myself to suppress. One hit didn't prove anything. I needed consistency, repeatability. Over the next week, I conducted 12 more test firings at extended range. I hit the target 8 times, a success rate far higher than I dared hope for. The word spread through the squadron quickly. Pilots who dismissed my efforts as a waste of time suddenly wanted to see demonstrations. Captain Morrison, my most vocal critic, watched one of my practice sessions with growing amazement. "I don't believe what I'm seeing," he muttered, as I put 3 consecutive bursts into a target at 1,300 yards. "That's not possible. That shouldn't be possible." "But it is," I said. "The math works. The technique works. We just have to be willing to trust the calculations." Captain Williams was impressed, but cautious. "You've proven the concept works against a non-maneuvering target, but enemy fighters aren't going to fly straight and level while you line up a shot from 1,000 yards away." "No, sir, they won't. But if I can engage them before they know I'm there, before they start maneuvering, I can get that first shot off while they're still predictable. And in air combat, that first shot is often the one that matters most." "Maybe," Williams conceded, "but the proof will be in actual combat. And I'm not sure I can authorize you to waste ammunition on experimental long-range shots during actual missions." "Then don't authorize it," I said. "Just don't forbid it either. Let me prove it works when the opportunity presents itself." He considered this, then nodded slowly. "Fine, but Carson, if this technique of yours gets you or anyone else killed, it's on you. Understood?" "Understood, sir." The opportunity came sooner than I expected. On August 15th, intelligence reported a major Japanese air raid forming up near Rabaul, heading toward our positions on Guadalcanal. Every available fighter was scrambled to intercept, including my flight of 4 P-38s. We climbed to 20,000 feet, positioning ourselves above the expected approach route. The waiting was always the hardest part, sitting in the cockpit, scanning the sky, knowing that somewhere out there, enemy fighters were coming to kill you. My hands were steady on the controls, but my heart hammered in my chest. This was it. The moment where theory would meet reality, where all my calculations and practice would either prove valid or prove fatal. "Bandits, 11 o'clock low," About 15 miles out, our flight leader, Major Richard Hayes, called over the radio. Looks like 20-plus fighters escorting bombers. Everyone stay sharp. Through the haze, I could make out the enemy formation. A swarm of aircraft approaching in neat V formations. Zeros providing top cover for Betty bombers below. Standard Japanese tactics, using their fighters' superior maneuverability to protect the vulnerable bombers. We began our approach, diving to build speed and position ourselves for an attack run. The plan was conventional: slash through the fighter escort, disrupt their formation, try to get shots on the bombers. It would be chaotic, close-range combat, where our advantages in speed and firepower would be partially offset by the Zeros' agility. But I saw another option. The Japanese fighters were still in tight formation, not yet maneuvering, focused on maintaining their escort pattern. They hadn't spotted us yet. We were still too far out, approaching from their high 6 o'clock, where the sun made us hard to see. I had maybe 30 seconds before they identified us as threats and broke formation to engage. 30 seconds to prove my long-range gunnery technique wasn't just a training exercise curiosity. 2. Breaking right, I called to Danny, my wingman. I'm going to try something. Mike, what are you? I didn't explain, there wasn't time. Instead of following the flight into the dive toward the enemy formation, I leveled off at 20,000 feet and adjusted my approach angle. I was now roughly 1,400 yards from the nearest Zero, flying almost directly behind the enemy formation. Through my gun sight, I could barely distinguish individual aircraft. They were just shapes, dark spots against the lighter sky. But I didn't need to see them clearly. I needed to calculate their position, their trajectory, the point in space where they would be when my rounds arrived. I picked the lead Zero in the nearest Vic of 3 fighters. He was holding steady, maintaining formation discipline, probably focused on watching for threats from ahead rather than checking his 6 o'clock. That made him predictable. I ran the calculations in my head. Speed differential, closure rate, bullet drop at range, required lead angle. My hand adjusted the stick minutely, raising my nose to compensate for the extreme drop my rounds would experience over 1,400 yards. The lead required was massive, putting my aim point what seemed like airplane lengths ahead of the target. Every instinct screamed that I was aiming at empty air, that this was impossible, that I should break off and follow standard tactics. I ignored those instincts and fired. The 20mm cannon rounds arced through the air in a trajectory I'd calculated dozens of times in training, but never attempted in actual combat. For a moment, nothing happened. The rounds were still in flight, covering the distance between my P-38 and the target. Then the lead Zero exploded. One moment it was flying in perfect formation. The next, it was a ball of flame and debris, disintegrating as my rounds found their mark with devastating precision. The explosion was so sudden, so unexpected, that the other Japanese pilots clearly had no idea what had happened. Their formation wavered as pilots looked around frantically, trying to identify the threat. "Jesus Christ!" Major Hayes' voice burst over the radio. "Who got that kill? Where did that come from?" "Carson here," I replied, already lining up my next shot. "Long-range engagement." "Long range? Mike, that guy was... How far out were you?" "About 1,400 yards, sir, going for another." I didn't wait for his response. The Japanese formation was starting to break apart now, pilots beginning evasive maneuvers as they tried to locate the threat. But I had a few more seconds before they fully dispersed, a few more seconds where I could use their confusion against them. I selected another Zero, this one turning slightly as its pilot began to react to the emergency. The turn made the calculation more complex. I had to lead not just for forward motion, but for the angular movement of the turn. My training sessions had covered this scenario, but applying it in combat with my heart pounding and adrenaline surging was different. I adjusted my aim, compensating for the target's bank angle and rate of turn, and fired another burst. The second Zero didn't explode like the first. Instead, my rounds stitched across its fuselage and wing, causing structural failure that sent the aircraft into an uncontrolled spin. I watched it fall away, trailing smoke and pieces of airframe. The pilot never got out. 2 confirmed kills in less than 30 seconds, both from ranges where the targets couldn't even see me clearly, let alone shoot back. "Carson's got 2! Danny's voice was filled with excitement. "He's shooting them down from... I don't even know how far, they can't touch him." The Japanese formation was in complete disarray now. The sudden loss of 2 fighters from an invisible threat had shattered their discipline. Zeros broke formation wildly, some diving, others climbing, all of them trying to locate and engage an enemy they couldn't see. That's when the rest of our flight hit them. Major Hayes led the dive attack into the confused enemy formation, our P-38s slashing through the scattered Zeros with devastating effect. The Japanese pilots were caught between two threats: the conventional attack from Hayes' element and my continued long-range sniping from above. I picked my targets carefully now, selecting aircraft that were fixated on Hayes' flight and unaware of the danger from long range. A Zero pulled into a tight turn, trying to get on Hayes' tail. I calculated the deflection shot, accounting for the extreme angle and distance, and fired. My rounds converged on the Zero's engine, and it belched smoke before falling away. 3 confirmed kills. Another Zero was climbing, trying to gain altitude advantage. I caught him in a moment of straight flight, his energy bleeding off as he neared the top of his climb. The shot was almost vertical, requiring calculations I'd never attempted even in training. I aimed high, absurdly high, and fired. The Zero shuddered as my rounds hit home, then fell away in a flat spin. 4 confirmed kills in less than 2 minutes. "Carson, what the hell are you doing up there?" Hayes called. "Get down here and..." "Wait, did you just get another one?" "Affirmative, sir. 4 confirmed from long range." "4? In 2 minutes? From how far?" "Ranging from 1,200 to 1,500 yards, sir. The technique is working exactly as calculated." There was a pause on the radio. Then Hayes said simply, "Well, keep it up. You're tearing them apart." The air battle continued for another 10 minutes, a swirling melee of aircraft that ranged from 20,000 feet down to the deck. Our flight accounted for 11 confirmed kills total, with no losses. 4 of those were mine, all achieved from ranges that most pilots would consider absurd for air-to-air combat. When we landed back at Henderson Field, a crowd had already gathered. Radio chatter had spread the word about the long-range kills, and every pilot in the squadron wanted to hear the details. Captain Morrison was one of the first to reach me as I climbed down from my cockpit. His expression was a mixture of disbelief and respect. "Mike, I owe you the biggest apology of my life," he said, shaking his head. "I thought you were crazy, we all did. But you just proved that long-range gunnery isn't just possible, it's deadly effective. Thanks, Jake. But it's not about being right or wrong. It's about finding better ways to win." "Better ways to win," he repeated. "You didn't just win today, Carson. You revolutionized air combat tactics. Shooting down fighters from ranges where they can't even identify you as a threat, that's not just an advantage, that's a game changer." Major Hayes pulled me aside after the initial excitement died down. His face was serious, thoughtful. "Carson, I need you to teach this technique to every pilot in the squadron. What you did today, that needs to be standard procedure, not a one-man show." "Sir, it's not easy to learn. It requires extensive practice, an understanding of ballistics that most pilots don't have, and a lot of patience. Some guys might not." "I don't care if it's hard," Hayes interrupted. "You just demonstrated a tactical advantage that could save lives and win engagements. That's worth whatever time and effort it takes to train our pilots. Starting tomorrow, you're leading gunnery training for the entire squadron. Anyone who can master your technique will be that much more effective in combat." Over the next 2 weeks, I conducted intensive training sessions, teaching the fundamentals of long-range aerial gunnery to every pilot in the squadron. Some took to it naturally, understanding the mathematics and developing the feel for the extreme lead angles required. Others struggled, finding it counterintuitive to aim at empty air and trust the calculations. Lieutenant Bobby Chen was one of my best students. A quiet pilot from California, he had a natural gift for mathematics and spatial reasoning. Within a week, he was consistently hitting targets at ranges exceeding 1,200 yards. "It's like shooting pool," he explained to other pilots during a training session. "You're not aiming at where the ball is. You're aiming at where it's going to be. Same principle, just in 3 dimensions at high speed." His explanation helped several struggling pilots finally grasp the concept. By the end of the 2nd week, 6 pilots in our squadron could reliably engage targets at extended range, and another dozen were showing promising development. But even the pilots who couldn't master the technique gained a new appreciation for the possibilities it represented. We were no longer limited to close-range furball engagements where luck played as big a role as skill. We could reach out and touch enemy aircraft from distances they couldn't counter, controlling the terms of engagement in ways that fundamentally favored our advantages in speed and firepower. Captain Williams, the engineering officer who'd been skeptical from the start, came to observe one of my training sessions. He watched silently as I demonstrated the technique, putting rounds on a towed drogue from 1,300 yards with consistent accuracy. "I was wrong," he said after the demonstration. "I thought it was theoretically possible but practically useless. You proved it's not just useful, it's revolutionary. The long-range P-38 shell isn't a joke anymore, Carson. It's the future of air combat." The technique proved its value again and again over the following months. I personally accumulated 14 confirmed kills using long-range gunnery, and other squadron pilots who mastered the method added their own victories to the tally. Lieutenant Chen got 3 confirmed kills in a single engagement, all from ranges exceeding 1,000 yards. The Japanese never adapted effectively to the threat. How could they, when the attacks came from ranges beyond their normal situational awareness? In September, I was promoted to captain and given command of my own flight, specifically tasked with employing long-range gunnery tactics against high-value targets. We became specialists, the guys they called when a crucial interception required certainty and minimal risk. The mission that defined my war came on October 3, 1943. Intelligence reported that Admiral Yamamoto himself was making an inspection tour of forward bases, traveling in a bomber escorted by 6 Zero fighters. The opportunity to eliminate one of Japan's most brilliant naval strategists was too good to pass up, but it required absolute precision. We couldn't afford a conventional dogfight that might allow the bomber to escape. My flight of 4 P-38s intercepted the enemy formation at 22,000 feet, approaching from high and behind, just as I'd done in that first successful long-range engagement. The Japanese were flying in tight formation, maintaining radio silence, confident in their fighter escort. They never saw us coming. From 1,600 yards, almost a mile, I lined up the lead Zero and fired. The fighter exploded, just like the first kill I'd achieved with this technique. Before the Japanese pilots could react, I'd shifted targets and fired again. Another Zero fell away, burning. My wingmen engaged the remaining escorts with their own long-range shots while I focused on the bomber itself. It was a larger target, easier to hit at extreme range, but also more heavily built and harder to bring down with a single burst. I calculated the intercept carefully, accounting for the bomber's steady course and the significant bullet drop at range. My first burst hit the bomber's port engine, which immediately began trailing smoke. The second burst shattered the cockpit, and the bomber entered a shallow dive that would end in the ocean below. The entire engagement lasted less than a minute. The Japanese escort was decimated, the bomber destroyed, and we'd accomplished our mission without ever entering the enemy's effective engagement range. It was long-range aerial gunnery at its absolute finest. Yamamoto wasn't on that particular bomber. Intelligence had been wrong about which aircraft he was flying in, but the principle was proven beyond any doubt. We could reach out and eliminate targets with surgical precision from ranges that rendered us effectively invulnerable. The technique spread throughout the Pacific Theater as other squadrons learned about our success. By 1944, long-range gunnery was part of standard training for P-38 pilots, and engagement doctrines had been rewritten to emphasize the advantage of attacking from extended range before closing to conventional fighting distances. Colonel Patterson, who'd been skeptical during my initial briefing, personally congratulated me during a group ceremony in November. Captain Carson, I should say, you've changed how we fight this war. When you first presented your theories, I thought it was interesting but impractical. You proved me wrong in the most decisive way possible. Thank you, sir, but the credit belongs to everyone who was willing to learn the technique and apply it in combat. Perhaps, Patterson said, but you were the one who had the vision to see beyond conventional doctrine. That's the mark of a true innovator. They'd mocked the long-range P-38 shell, treated it like a fantasy that ignored the realities of air combat. But I'd proven that reality could be changed with the right combination of mathematics, practice, and determination. What seemed impossible became merely difficult, and what was difficult became routine with proper training. I finished the war with 23 confirmed kills, 19 of them achieved using long-range gunnery techniques. Other pilots in my squadron added dozens more, all of them victories achieved with minimal risk because we'd learned to fight on our terms, at our ranges, where our advantages were maximized and enemy countermeasures were minimized. The critics had called it impossible, the skeptics had called it impractical. But in the brutal laboratory of combat, where theories met reality and only what worked survived, long-range aerial gunnery proved to be one of the most effective tactical innovations of the Pacific Air War. All because one pilot looked at the problem differently, did the math, put in the practice time, and refused to accept that impossible meant impossible. Sometimes the difference between failure and revolutionary success is nothing more than the willingness to prove the critics wrong.